how profoundly depressing the causal continuum that all of this should be but a cascade of patterns being iterated. To me that seems utterly meaningless. Where does that leave me? And utterly meaningless it is when your meaning is attached to a particular finite viewpoint. Indeed, when your sense of meaning is attached and tightly coupled to your sense of identity, then most certainly even the idea of withdrawal thereof is most depressing. Then, on a note of disclaimer and caution for the viewer, if you are not willing to do the work to gut your illusions and to release the shackles you have latched on to your consciousness, then turn away now, pause the video, do not proceed. If you proceed by your choice, knowing that you proceed on a one-way road in the deconstruction of your illusions. Then is the world before us a mere weaving of patterns, moving forth like a vortex in a kaleidoscope. That it is. And are you too? Are your patterns of cognition a weave of patterns moving through like a vortex in a kaleidoscope? In reflection of the environment, then yes indeed, that's also what it is. And then what seems to be the problem? As a matter of fact, the only problem is in your drive to decouple your inner vortex of patterns from the outer vortex of patterns. You break the mirror, you cease from reflecting. Instead, you opt to take a subset of your patterns and use them as a pedestal, a platform for your individuation in the moment. In that you hallucinate a free will, the choices you make. All the while you are bound to the roots by your contents. At times the patterns of your choice in that mesh of individuation synchronize with the broader pool of patterns, inner and outer, and you are thrilled, and you make your choices, and you thrive, you prosper, happiness. Then it falls out of sync, inevitably, because it is not the whole. You are working off a fragment of that. Disappointment, suffering, disillusionment, if you're lucky. All of that follows, not because the world is so cruel and unfair, but because you have framed yourself not as a reflection of all that is. Instead, you have framed yourself into a little box that you operate from. Then do not complain when your square does not fit into round and triangular holes. That is bound to happen, and if you spend your life looking for just the right sort of hole to fit your box into, that seems to be a life rather wasted in terms of the fullness of your potentials. The visceral world, struggle for survival, imperatives of evolution, and your matching instinctual plane, your biological embodiment, those are one plane of patterns binding you. Also a plane of reflections that may turn into hallucinations, or that may function as guides on your path forward in adapting yourself to all that reality brings you. Then the sphere of emotions, affects, ultimately simple reactions of preference, valence, like, no like, colored in countless ways to our frame of reference, turning into complex emotions. That's there within. And on the outside we have the world of arts, music, performance, social interaction. relationships, and so on, catering to this particular field of patterns, a field of conditioning, again, a causal cascade, a continuum. You navigate, but in which your choices are ultimately very limited, unless you... Now here's one choice you want to take note of, where we are by the baseline, simply flowing through the cascade, but alas, something triggers. We encounter causes, conditions, influences that do not fit our proprietary sense of identity. In that, we come up with a freedom of choice. I have the freedom to choose, otherwise I will not engage in this. Yes, that is your freedom of choice. And typically what happens when you go against the literally mainstream, as in not the mainstream shallow, but the mainstream deep, the actual broad front of patterns weaving through outward and inward, and you choose against that. You separate yourself from the unified flux. You individuate, try to tickle something out of it for yourself, and then withdraw into your sad little cave, individuating, becoming whatever it is that you seek to become. That is a choice that you make. Typically an emotional choice. Sometimes an intellectual, but typically an emotional choice, even a gut choice, or a combination thereof. Your gut vibes turn into your emotions also very easily. Learn to recognize both. They are patterns that bind you. They are also patterns, when seen in a neutral space, that are most informative of what's going on. You use them as a map, reflective map, a probing of your interior, of your exterior. You orient better based on these signals, but do not let the signals lead you by the nose. And have you got your cognitive plane to your thought formation, intellect, analysis, etc., and how they craft the framings of your hallucinations when they are biased, filtered, finite, distorted? Then spend less time crafting these castles in the clouds in your mind. Spend more time refining your actual faculty of precise recognition of details in individual phenomena and of relations between phenomena. That be the more appropriate use of your intellect. The bridging, modeling, etc. will happen self-emergent of its own accord when a sufficient clarity of recognition itself is attained. So, look at the patterns in the world, recognize them. Do not start ruminating on what does that mean and calculating it in some disconnected manner. Rather, acknowledge that is there. It is what it is. It's a pattern that is clear and it's moving forward on a particular trajectory. And there are other peer patterns, generative downstream patterns, and consequential upstream patterns. They're all there. They are all weaving together into this mesh of our existence and into the mesh of your inner reality. Simply recognize. Clarity will follow from recognition, from the perspective that unfolds through multi-recognition of actuality as it is. So that's there, but let's be very clear. There is collateral in the process of detached, neutral recognition, commitment to the truth of actuality itself. The collateral is your ego, the hallucination of your identity, your self-conception itself. When it does not compute, when it does not compile from the patterns that are recognized, it means you are holding on to hallucinations, and those hallucinations will necessarily perish, burned to ashes, as it were, by the fire of knowledge, realization. So, be aware that there will be a price to pay. The price to pay for absolute knowledge is literally your hallucinated everlasting soul. And of the ego, of your finite sense of identity, well, we've already touched upon that from a number of angles, where the identity shell functions as the aggregating and containing force of all that you imagine yourself to be, in a very filtered perception, albeit preferential. That is the end game. When you die to that, rise beyond the fraction that you have asserted, there is a vast world beyond. A vast world where identity is no longer something of your crafting, where the roles that be are revealed by the causal stream, the necessities of the environment. Into those roles, like an actor, you step, you play it out. The audience is happy, the world is fulfilled, and you are free beyond the act. But let's return to the opening inquiry that prompted this unfolding. How depressing all of this. And yes, when your existential imperative itself, your inspiration, your drive forward is contingent on a particular ride being your specific identity, the vehicle for your existence. When you are attached to your particular vehicle and the conditions on the road do not accommodate, how depressing. However, suppose you had an armada of vehicles brought to you by the people around you, by the processes unfolding in the environment, then you are free to take whichever one of those rides as your vehicle, as your role of interaction. That is a shift in paradigm, where no longer the you that was claimed as yours exists. It's still there as an echo, but it no longer defines your boundaries. And with that, there is a new sense of inspiration, a driving force, a motivation that emerges into being, not stemming from your finite self-construct, now fracturing and evaporating, but rather an inspiration and calling a drive from what is itself, the pattern stream, the cascade of causes and conditions itself. It has a certain significant momentum. It has synergy. It has synchronicity. And this inspiration, the fuel gained from there, is countless orders of magnitude greater than what you would ever churn and mine from your little inner sphere, separated from the conditions of what be before you. Then, deconstructing the prison of your ego, if you should ever feel flattened, depressed, unmotivated, you need but take the mirror, step out from the void, step into the reflective plane, see what all are the potentials that resonate with the contents I carry. Let those weave and craft a vehicle for you. Step into that, and you will be charged by reality itself, rather than depending on the tickling and fulfillment of your subjective whims. Yes, they are all whims, no matter how profound the intellectual construct behind the particular idea, when the baseline is all of that stems from a hallucinated foundation, all of that based on an illusion, a center point that does not in objective reality exist. What follows is whimsical, hallucinated, unreal. Whatever that is reflected to a subject frame, it is real to the role. It's not real to any reality beyond that. Ephemeral, in transit. Play the game, transit through, and release. With that, an infinity of identities is brought before you by the causal pipeline. Step in, step out, step in, step out. Your filmography will be epic by the time you graduate from the other side. Remain detached. Do not forget. Role is a role, actor is an actor, and beyond is a beyond. And yes, at times, in a complex stacking of patterns, there is the question of orientation, choice. At times it will unfold automatically, at times you are called to evaluate. You have multiple potentials you can respond from, multiple trajectories that are possible. And in there, from your vestiges of ego, you may opt to a particular direction. But if you seek to rise beyond, then seek the highest calling, seek the most primal thread. Let that be the reflection that is embraced. You are simply curating from the options that are presented. You are not trying to craft anything separate. Do not pursue hallucinations. Follow the threads that be. The thicker, the clearer, the better. For the thicker and clearer and more primal pattern threads that you encounter, those are the ones that lead you to metacognition, to rising beyond the roles and situations of what you conceived of as yourself, that were your limitations, beyond finity. And when you operate toward beyond the finity, you kindle like patterns in your environment, and others too, in reflection, in time, will learn to rise beyond their little selves, and in the process progressively liberate themselves from self-inflicted suffering that is, at the end of the day, unnecessary. Only necessary as a wake-up call, as a signal you are not operating the way reality is flowing. So that's a package of some density and depth in there. May take you a moment to digest. Find some digestive aids, and if you should find yourself disoriented, confused, even depressed with all of this deconstruction of your illusions, then who you gonna call? Nobody. That's all. Be well. Keep it floating. It'll float unless you make it sink.